steady and unhurried. Good evening, sweetheart. It's Maggie. Come sit with me. Let's make this night a gentler one. There's a particular kind of rain that Seattle keeps just for evenings like this. A rain that doesn't rush, doesn't insist, but arrives the way an old friend would, quietly, gently, carrying a little warmth inside its coolness. Tonight, that rain has found my house again. I brought my cup of tea with me, chamomile with a thin ribbon of honey, and as I walked into the living room, the steam rose in soft, wandering curls, almost like it wanted to meet the rain halfway. The room is dim, intentionally so. I've always felt evenings were more honest when the lights don't try too hard. The lamp beside me glows in its usual way, that warm amber color that feels older than electricity, as if someone a long time ago taught light how to be gentle. Lily is here too, of course. She's curled into the familiar little circle she makes when she approves of the night's tone. Her breathing is slow, almost synchronized with the rain. Some creatures just know how to belong to a moment. I'm still learning. I sat down in my chair a few minutes ago, the chair that holds more of my shape than I'm willing to admit, and as it welcomed me with that familiar, soft sigh, I realized how comforting it is to have furniture that doesn't judge the way you settle into it. Earlier this evening, when I was heating water for the tea, the kettle made that little impatient hiss before it settles into its simmer. It reminded me of how I used to rush everything, even moments that never asked for speed. At 63, I finally learned the luxury of letting water boil at its own pace. The rain thickened just now. I can hear it changing rhythm, the way Seattle rain always does when the clouds rearrange their thoughts. There's something healing in that sound, something that leans quietly against the heart without pushing. Maybe that's why so many nights in this city start with stillness and end with a kind of peace you don't realize you needed until it's already wrapped itself around you. I looked toward the window a moment ago, the glass glowing faintly from the street lamp outside. Each raindrop catches the light for just a breath before sliding down, leaving tiny glowing trails behind. It looks almost like handwriting, messages written briefly than erased by gravity. I've always believed that rainy evenings speak in metaphors, not loud ones, not dramatic ones, the kind that stay with you only if you stand still long enough to hear them. Tonight, I'm listening. There's a comfort in this cup of tea, too. The way the warmth presses gently into my palms, not demanding to be held, but grateful for it. It's the kind of warmth that feels earned, like a small kindness I offered myself without thinking too hard about it. I took the first sip while standing in the kitchen, and for a moment, the world felt less scattered. It's funny how something as simple as warm honey can make an evening feel stitched back together. If someone told me in my 20s that a cup of tea would one day anchor my whole mood, I would have laughed and ordered more coffee. But evenings change a woman. Age softens the places caffeine once made sharper. I'm thinking tonight about the way rain sounded when I was younger, how it used to feel exciting, like the world was stirring something big. But now, it feels like permission to slow down, permission to just sit, permission not to solve anything that isn't knocking on the door. A small memory drifted in earlier, a December night long ago, 1994 maybe, when the roof of our old duplex clicked loudly every time the furnace switched on. I used to joke that the house was clearing its throat before giving us warmth. Even then, I believed homes had personalities. I suppose most women who live alone long enough learn to speak fluent house. At night, my house feels attentive, quiet in a listening way, not an empty one. There's a difference. You know, there's something else happening inside me tonight. A little shift, a gentle opening, like the way the rain spreads itself across the window without needing to be seen. It's not sadness, not loneliness, just that tender awareness that sometimes arrives when the night is calm enough to show you the things you didn't know you were carrying. I'm grateful for evenings like this, ones that don't require explanation, ones that understand silence, ones that hold you rather than wait for you to hold them. The tea is cooling now, the steam rising thinner than before, but even that feels right for the moment. Some warmth isn't meant to stay hot. Some warmth just needs to stay long enough to remind you that comfort still exists. The first sip was sweetness. This one tastes like settling, like breathing, like belonging to the evening instead of rushing past it. Outside, a car passed earlier, slow, careful, and its headlights brushed across my window like a soft, passing thought. The glow lingered for a second before melting back into the rain. Moments come and go like that. Quiet visitors, leaving little impressions behind without asking for anything. Lily's ears twitched at something, maybe the garage door from next door, maybe the rain adjusting its rhythm again. But she settled quickly, as if the night reassured her there was nothing she needed to worry about. I envy that kind of trust sometimes, the trust dogs place in stillness. She's better at peace than I am, but tonight I feel the peace finding me anyway, finding this lamp, this chair, this warm cup, this December rain, this little corner of my life that's learning to glow again. And as I sit here, letting the night settle its gentle hands across the room, I can't help but feel softened, held, present for my own life in a way I haven't always been. This is a good night, a gentle one, a night stitched together by rain, warm tea, and the kind of quiet that understands the heart without needing any words at all. Lino, there's a particular moment in an evening like this when the rain steadies itself, almost as if it chooses a rhythm that makes breathing easier. And tonight, I think it found that rhythm right as I stepped back toward the kitchen island with my warm cup held close. The steam curled upward again, soft and slow, like it was trying to whisper something I wasn't meant to hear fully, only feel. The sound of the cup landing on the wood was small, but somehow it felt like a punctuation mark for the quiet thought forming in me. I leaned my palms onto the edge of the counter, feeling the familiar smoothness of the grain. This old wood that survived years of my cooking victories, my cooking disasters, and a few evenings where the only thing I managed was boiling water correctly. At 63, I've come to appreciate water that behaves predictably. Outside, the street lamp flickered slightly, not in a worrying way, just a soft tremble of light as the wind moved through the branches. Seattle rain always carries the scent of cedar and memory, and tonight it drifted through the cracked window in a thin, cold ribbon that brushed my cheek, the way an old photograph might brush the heart. I turned toward the living room, and for a moment, I simply watched the faint glow of the lamp spill across the floor as though it were laying down a path for me to follow back into the evening's softness. The house does that sometimes, guides me without insisting. As I moved, Lily lifted her head again. Her ears perked in that gentle, loyal way that says, "I'm here. I've been here." Her eyes caught a little bit of the lamplight and softened around the edges, almost like she understood that tonight wasn't a night that needed anything big or loud, just presence, warm, steady presence. I brushed my fingers through her fur as I passed, and she let out a tiny sigh that felt like an agreement between us both. When I reached the chair, I paused, letting the moment register in my chest before I settled back down. Some evenings ask to be noticed before you take your seat. My cushion rose around me again, cradling the weight of the day with the same patience I wish I had learned earlier in life. I lifted the cup from the armrest, feeling the warmth smooth itself into the cold lines of my fingers. It reminded me of something small, a tenderness from years ago that arrived unexpectedly on a December night in 2001. We were sitting in our old living room then, the heater doing its best, but never quite succeeding, and he wrapped a blanket around my shoulders with this gentle, unspoken care that felt almost like a prayer. Neither of us said anything. We just listened to the rain. Back then, silence felt like a complete language. I think about that sometimes, how certain memories return, not as pain, not as longing, but as a soft warmth that helps you survive the quieter nights. Tonight feels like one of those nights. The rain shifted again, changing from steady drumming to a softer tapping, as if the storm was adjusting itself to fit the tone of the room. Seattle rain may not always be kind, but it's always thoughtful. I took a small sip of my tea, letting it settle inside me like a gentle anchor. The honey moved through the warmth with a slowness I've grown fond of, a reminder that sweetness doesn't always rush. Sometimes it arrives only when the temperature is right. My eyes wandered to the small bonsai on the side table, the one I trimmed last Sunday. Its silhouette looked particularly tender tonight, thin, intentional, and holding more patience than I've ever been able to offer myself. Bonsai teaches you something without saying it aloud, that shaping takes time, and gentleness is a stronger tool than force. And at this age, I think I finally understand why those lessons matter. The room felt warmer now, not because of the lamp alone, but because the evening had settled into a kind of shared stillness, the kind you feel in your bones before you feel it in the air. I rested the cup against my knee, letting the heat pool through the fabric as the rain softened further into a quiet, persistent hum. You know, there's something almost holy about a night like this. Not religious in the formal sense, but sacred in the way only quiet can be. I think that's why I keep the lamp on, not for light, but for comfort. A small, steady beacon to remind the heart that it's allowed to rest. Sometimes I catch myself imagining how the room must look from outside. Just a single square of golden light in a neighborhood full of windows, each one holding its own version of the evening. Maybe someone passing by thinks the glow looks peaceful. Maybe they imagine someone inside finding a moment of ease after a long day. And in a way, they'd be right. I shifted slightly in the chair, and the warmth of the cup touched the inside of my wrist, that small, delicate place where the pulse feels the world first. For a moment, I simply held the cup there, letting the rhythm of my heartbeat settle into something calmer. Rain, warmth, breath, the small trinity that holds an evening together. I glanced again toward the window, where the street lamp was turning every drifting raindrop into a soft falling star. There's a comfort in watching something fall without ever breaking. Seattle rain does that. It teaches you to let go without collapsing. I thought again about the neighbor's robin, the little one that's been visiting the fence lately. He wasn't out tonight, of course. Even robins know when the rain is writing its own chapter and doesn't want company. Smart bird. He always hops along the fence like he's inspecting my life choices. And sometimes I think he approves of me. Other times, I'm fairly certain he'd file a complaint if he knew how often I overwater the bonsai. The thought made me smile and for a moment, the heaviness in my chest loosened just a little. That's the thing about evenings like this. They don't fix the ache, but they soften the edges of it until it's safe to hold again. I lowered the cup to the armrest, letting my fingers rest for a moment as I listened, not to the rain alone, but to the way the house seemed to breathe with me. There are nights when everything aligns quietly, light, warmth, breath, memory, and the world feels just gentle enough. Tonight is one of those nights. There's a certain hour in the evening when the rain begins to act less like weather and more like a steady companion, not asking, not intruding, just being there. Tonight, somewhere between the second and third sip of tea, that hour arrived. I didn't see it come in. It simply settled itself beside the lamplight, filling the room with that gentle hum only Seattle seems to understand. I moved my hand along the curve of my mug, feeling the ceramic warmth drift into my fingers, and for reasons I can't fully explain, I remembered the winter of 1995, a small apartment with thin walls and a radiator that made decisions no one agreed to. That old radiator used to hiss like it was offended by the weather report. You could hear it in the hallway, complaining before it even turned on. I suppose even heaters need to vent sometimes. But that winter, that particular winter, something shifted in me. It was the first time I realized that silence itself could be soft. Before that, I always thought silence was empty. But that year, with its drifting snow, its stubborn heater, its quiet evenings, I learned that silence sometimes arrives like a blanket someone left warming on the edge of the bed. Tonight feels exactly like that. Earlier, I stood in the kitchen a little longer than usual. I was waiting for the kettle, though it wasn't taking any longer than it normally does. But something about the steam rising, slow, deliberate, reminded me to do the same. There's a rhythm to brewing tea that makes the heart behave better. You listen to the water waking up. You watch the steam curl into tiny, wandering shapes. And for a moment, your inner world becomes just as patient. I leaned against the counter and looked out through the window above the sink. The glow from the street lamp outside touched the raindrops on the glass, turning each one into a small, trembling star. Rain at night always looks like it's thinking, as if it's deciding which memories to pull forward and which to let rest. And tonight, apparently, it chose 1995. It was the year I bought my first real bonsai. I didn't know a thing about caring for it. Overwatered it the first week, underwatered it the second. But it stayed alive despite my inexperience and my enthusiasm and my very questionable pruning decisions. I still remember the look on my husband's face when he found me at 2 a.m, trimming that poor tree like I was performing surgery. He didn't say anything, just shook his head, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Try not to traumatize it." The funny thing is, that little bonsai lived for 12 more years. Stubborn tree. Or maybe it was patient with me in the same way the rain is patient tonight. I walked back toward the living room after the kettle sang, mug in hand, light spilling across the floor in long golden ribbons. The house felt alive in that quiet way old homes do. Not loud, not busy, just gently attentive. A soft draft slipped beneath the door, bringing with it the faint scent of wet cedar. It's a smell that always settles somewhere deep in me, like an old familiar voice saying, "I'm here. Sit down. Breathe." So I did. I settled into my chair, feeling the cushion gather around me with its usual tender welcome. The lamp warmed the side of my face, and Lily lifted her head, eyes half open, as if double-checking that the night was unfolding the way she approved of. She has a keen sense of timing, my sweet girl. She knows exactly when peace is trying to take shape. If I ever decide to teach a class on serenity, Lily will be the co-instructor. The tea tasted different tonight, a little fuller, a little deeper. Maybe it was the honey Dorothy gave me, or maybe it was just the kind of evening that helps flavors become themselves. I held the mug near my cheek for a moment, letting the warmth soften the colder places inside me. Sometimes healing begins where warmth meets stillness. Outside, the rain gentled into mist, that fine, almost invisible kind that makes the night look tender. The street lamp turned the air into a faint shimmer, like someone brushed the darkness with a soft golden hand. The house responded with one of its thoughtful little creaks, a small sound deep in the beams that reminded me of the year we moved in, how we spent our first December here, figuring out which switches controlled which lights, and laughing every time we got it wrong. I still get it wrong sometimes, but the house has stopped judging me for it. There are evenings, like tonight, when the past feels closer than the cup in my hand, not heavier, not sharper, just present in a way that makes sense. Memories don't always hurt. Sometimes they arrive gently, carrying their old light in soft little lanterns. 1995. The stubborn bonsai, the hissing radiator, the tiny apartment with big silence. Those things drifted back to me tonight, not to pull me backward, but to show me how far I've walked and how softly the path can glow when you allow the night to walk beside you. I glanced at the window again. The mist was still dancing in the street lamp's circle, moving with a rhythm that felt familiar and safe. I took another sip of tea and let the warmth bloom through my chest, a slow, patient kind of warmth that doesn't ask anything from me, the kind that simply says, "You made it through the day. That's enough." Some evenings arrive with clarity, others arrive with questions, but nights like this, they arrive with rest, and rest, genuine rest, is rarer than people admit. I leaned back, letting my shoulders loosen, letting my breath find a rhythm that matched the rain's quiet pulse. The lamp hummed gently. The room softened around me. Lily sighed with that little puff of air that always tells me she's settling in for the night's longer quiet. And I realized, with a kind of tender certainty, that even after all these years, rain still knows the exact shape of my solitude. It doesn't fill it. It doesn't erase it. It simply sits with it, the way an old friend sits beside you when you're tired, not to fix anything, but to keep the dark from feeling lonely. Tonight's rain, soft, thinking, unrushed, feels like a reminder that even the sky needs moments to loosen its weight. And maybe I needed that reminder too. There's a moment the night reaches when everything becomes just a little bit quieter than you expect. A softness that isn't exactly silence, more like the room deciding it has said enough for the day. Tonight, the house reached that moment before I did. I noticed it when I walked back toward the chair, the way the light from the lamp fell in a gentle arc across the rug, as if it were drawing one small circle of safety around the space where I always sit at this hour. A circle that says, "This is where you can exhale." So I did. I settled back down, letting the warmth of the cushion rise up to meet me, and the steam from my tea lifted into the air in those slow, delicate curls, the kind that make the evening a little easier to hold. Lily shifted near my feet, then rested her head on her paws in that dramatic way dogs do when they want the world to know they've chosen peace. Honestly, I could learn a thing or two from her. You know, there's a particular kind of comfort that arrives only at the end of a rainy night, after the weather has spent all its energy and the sky finally decides to stop insisting on itself. Tonight, that comfort approached slowly, like someone tiptoeing into the room, trying not to wake an old dream. I lifted the cup again, letting the honeyed warmth touch my lips, and I felt something inside me loosen, not break, just loosen, the way a tight thread finally gives after holding on a bit too long. It reminded me of something small, something from years ago that I don't think I've said aloud in a very long time. There was a December evening in 2005 when the rain fell exactly the way it's falling tonight, soft but steady, as if the sky couldn't decide whether it wanted to cry or hum. My husband had just come in from fixing the gutter, which, in fairness, he did once every winter and always pretended was a monumental act of heroism. He would shake the water from his jacket, track in half the cold from outside, and then say something like, "Well, I saved the house again," as if the gutter would have swallowed us whole if he hadn't intervened. I loved that about him, the small theatrics, the gentle seriousness, the way he could turn an ordinary chore into a story. That night, we sat together in the living room, much like I am now, tea in hand, lamp glowing softly. Lily wasn't here yet, of course, but the quiet felt familiar, almost identical, and I remember very clearly the way he looked at the window as the rain streaked down in thin, glowing lines. He said, "Rain makes it easier to tell the truth, you know." I never quite knew what he meant. I still don't. But somehow I understand it a little better tonight. There's something about evenings like this, the soft rain, the gentle light, the way the house settles into its old bones, that makes honesty feel closer to the surface. Not the loud kind of honesty, not the confessional kind, but the quiet truths that sit just beneath the heart, the ones ones you only notice when everything around you finally stops moving. And one of those quiet truths for me tonight is I didn't want to spend this evening alone. It feels good to talk like this, to sit here with the warm cup, the steady rain, and the sense that someone is listening on the other side of the quiet. These moments with you, they help more than I ever expected. I watch the window again, the glass fogging a little from the warmth inside the room. The street lamp outside was turning the mist into a pale, drifting glow, like a lantern held behind a veil. It made the night feel both older and younger at once, as if time wasn't entirely sure which direction it wanted to move. On nights like this, I think about how many evenings I've lived through, how many Decembers, how many cups of tea, how many soft conversations with rooms that didn't talk back. And yet, tonight feels different, not dramatic, not heavy, not life-changing, just different in the gentle way a night can feel when you don't have to move through it alone. I glance toward the small corner table, the one where I keep a few old Christmas cards from years I can't quite part with. Some of them are worn around the edges. Some have smudged ink. Some still carry that faint sparkle that never seems to fully come off. They're small things, sweet things, reminders of winters that were quieter and louder than this one. Dorothy once told me I keep too many sentimental items, but then she keeps every grocery receipt from the last 10 years, so I think we're even. I let my fingers trail along the spine of the chair, feeling the familiar grain of the wood, and something in me softened again, a kind of inward unclenching that only happens when the night becomes a friend instead of a backdrop. I don't know if you feel it too, this sense that the room shifts just slightly when you allow yourself to settle fully into it. But tonight, I felt that shift. The rain outside slowed even more, a softer, sleepier pattern now, as if the clouds themselves were finally ready to lay their worries down. And I felt ready to let the day end, ready to let the night be gentle, ready to let the quiet wrap itself around me like a shawl someone placed on my shoulders without asking. Before I close the evening, I want to say something small, something true, something soft. Tonight felt easier because you were here, even if you're far, even if I can't see you, even if all of this happens in different rooms, different lives, different moments. There is a kind of comfort in knowing that this quiet is something we share. So let the night take its gentle shape around you. Let the rain finish its lullaby. Let your breath fall into the rhythm the world is offering now. And may this evening, this soft, rain-lined moment, carry you into a deeper rest. Rest well tonight, sweetheart. Good night. From me, Maggie. There's a moment, always around this time of night, when the house seems to settle a little deeper into its bones. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a faint shift, as if old wood is remembering how to breathe along with me. I moved my thumb along the handle of the cup, letting the warmth sit against my skin. It's funny how something so small can anchor you more than the bigger things ever did. A warm cup at 7:42 p.m. has held me together more faithfully than entire years of planning ever could. At 63, I think I trust tea more than I trust my own knees. A little earlier, maybe 15 minutes ago, I heard the softest flutter near the kitchen window. For a second, I thought the draft was playing tricks on me, but when I turned my head, there it was, the small reddish silhouette of a robin perched on the outer sill. Not the chubby old fellow that visits most mornings. He's too sensible to be out in the evening rain. This one was younger, sleeker, as if it hadn't learned yet that December nights in Seattle can soak straight into a bird's bones. I stood quietly, watching it tilt its head toward the warm light inside. There was something almost polite in the way it peeked through the glass, like it didn't want to intrude, only borrow a little comfort from the glow of the kitchen. For a moment, I felt the strange tenderness that only small creatures can draw out, that instinctive, gentle wish that the world would treat them kindly. You know, I've always believed that birds understand loneliness better than humans do. They know how to hold long spaces of quiet flight without feeling abandoned by the sky. The robin fluttered its wings once, sending a scatter of droplets down the window pane. And then, just as quietly, it disappeared into the dark. Just a brief visitor, like some people in our lives. Not meant to stay, but meant to soften one moment we didn't know needed softening. After it left, I walked back toward the living room, and the light followed me. Not literally, of course, but in that way familiar spaces always do when they're used to your shape. The house is quieter these nights. Not empty, just quieter. There's a distinction only people my age tend to understand. When I sat back down, Lily lifted her head and gave me that look, the one where her eyebrows try to express 3 paragraphs of opinion at once. For a dog, she has remarkable emotional range. I sometimes think if she had opposable thumbs, she'd take over the decision-making in this house. She laid her chin on my foot with that warm, sleepy weight that feels like trust in its purest form. And I felt something inside me relax another inch. It's strange, isn't it? How days that feel scattered can still end in a kind of harmony you didn't see coming. The rain had softened by then, not gone, just quieter, the way a conversation dims when both people finally understand each other. My eyes wandered again to the little bonsai on the corner table, a juniper I've had for, at least 12 years now. It leans slightly to one side, not because I shaped it that way, but because life shaped it that way when a storm in 2014 snapped one of its branches. The tree learned asymmetry the way we learn loss, slowly, quietly, and with more grace than we realize at the time. But here's the thing, the bend made it beautiful. Sometimes I think we are all just learning how to grow around the things that won't grow back. That bonsai has become my unintentional teacher. It doesn't lecture. It doesn't explain. It simply exists in its shape, persistent, imperfect, and quietly proud of surviving weather meant to break it. I suppose if I ever wrote a self-help book, which I won't, it would just be pictures of that tree from different angles. There's a softness tonight that wasn't here earlier, a kind of stillness that makes the walls fade and the lamp glow deeper. Even Lily's breathing has matched the rhythm of the rain. It feels like the house itself is exhaling with me. I reached for the old blanket, the faded blue one, and pulled it over my knees. It still carries the faint scent of cedar from the storage chest I use every summer. That scent, mixed with the quiet warmth of the lamp, sent me drifting gently toward a memory I haven't visited in years. A December evening in 1991. A rental house with thin walls, a heater that sounded like it was chewing gravel, and a much younger me holding a cup of peppermint tea that tasted far too strong because I didn't yet know you weren't supposed to leave the tea bag in for 20 minutes. Life was louder then, busier, full of things I thought mattered and things I didn't realize mattered at all. And yet, somehow, despite how chaotic those years felt, the memory arrived tonight as soft as the mist on the window. Time has a way of sanding down the sharpest parts and leaving the warmth intact. I look toward the window again, watching the mist blur the street lamp into a small glowing halo, the kind of light that doesn't try to illuminate everything, only the piece of night that needs a little company. Maybe that's what evenings like this are for. Not for solving anything, not for pushing anything forward, but for keeping the dark from feeling too large. The bones of the house creaked again, a soft sound, almost affectionate, a reminder that even old structures are still settling, still learning how to hold themselves after years of weight. I know that feeling too. As Lily shifted in her sleep, her paw brushing lightly against my foot, I felt that small, unexpected swell of gratitude, the kind that rises quietly, without fanfare, like steam from a cup. A simple thankfulness for a night that doesn't need to be anything except what it already is. Rain, warm tea, a patient lamp, a dog who loves too honestly, and the gentle miracle of not needing to pretend. It struck me then how evenings like this are stitched together not by grand moments, but by the smallest threads. A bird on a window, a dog's sleepy breath, the glow of a hallway, the way the steam curls in its own quiet handwriting. This, I think, is how steadiness returns, not as a wave, but as a whisper. And somehow, in the soft hum of the lamp, in the rain that has become more mist than storm, in the gentle weight of the blanket across my knees, I felt the night lean just a little closer, not demanding anything, not offering answers, just being here. The house had grown quieter in that special way it only does when the rain has softened into mist, and every wooden beam inside these walls seems to take a slow, grateful breath. I stayed there for a long moment, my fingertips resting along the warm curve of the cup, letting the last threads of steam rise like a quiet curtain between the day and whatever the night still wished to offer me. There's something about finishing a cup of tea that feels like finishing a thought, not ending it, just letting it land where it naturally wants to rest. Tonight, it rested softly. The mist outside made the street lamp glow as if wrapped in thin silk. Every shape beyond the window lost its edges, like the world was kind enough to blur itself for a while, to give my tired eyes a gentler horizon. I traced a slow circle on the side of the cup, feeling the last warmth gather at the bottom. Funny how a cup cools in the same rhythm a person unwinds, gradually, without apology. At 63, cooling down gracefully is basically a spiritual discipline. Lily shifted on the rug and rested her chin on her paws, like she'd decided the night was steady enough for her to let go of her watchful duties. I lowered my hand and let my fingers graze the top of her head. She hummed a tiny sigh, the kind that escapes before a creature knows it's been heard. That small sound settled something inside me in a way words rarely can. For a moment, I let my gaze follow the dim outline of the bookshelf, the old clock on the far wall, and the quiet fabric of the armchair across from me. All the silent witnesses of so many evenings just like this one. This house, it holds my shape even when I feel a little blurred around the edges. And tonight, the edges are soft in a way I don't mind. I thought again about the memory that brushed through me earlier, that fogged window from years ago, the quiet presence beside me, the steady rhythm of two people not needing words to feel understood. There are certain memories that never settle in sadness. They settle in gratitude instead, a soft echo of, I lived that, and I loved in that time, and I'm still here to breathe because of it. Tonight, that echo felt close, close enough to sit beside me, the way one sits beside a friend who doesn't need explanations. I let the quiet fill the room again, not because I ran out of thoughts, but because the thoughts themselves had grown gentle enough to rest among the sounds of the night. The gutter outside tapped one last rhythm, a slow, hollow drip, and then the whole world seemed to exhale. There's a kind of peace that only arrives at the end of a long, tender evening, not triumphant, not profound, just honest and perfectly sized for a tired heart. I leaned back a little deeper in my chair and let my shoulders drop with the quiet permission of the moment. It felt like placing something heavy into the hands of someone who loves you enough to hold it without asking why. The lamp warmed the side of my cheek, as if reminding me that even small lights can feel like company. Sometimes I think this lamp knows more about me than I know about myself. But perhaps that's what happens when an object sits with you through enough winters. It learns your breathing the way a friend learns your silence. Lily's breathing deepened again, that gentle, rhythmic rise and fall that always makes me feel like the world is balancing itself correctly. Outside, the mist grew thin enough to let the distant hum of a late-night car roll softly through the neighborhood. Not intrusive, just a reminder that life continues in quiet ways, even when mind slows to a tender crawl. I lifted the cup one last time, though I knew it was empty. Some part of me simply wanted to feel the shape of it before setting it down for the night. That small sound, the meeting of porcelain and wood, always feels like the punctuation mark of a day that has finally found its ending. A gentle period, never a harsh one. I let my eyes drift toward the window again, where a faint halo of lamplight still clung to the residual mist. The scene looked like something half remembered from a dream I must have had long ago. Soft, warm, shapeless in the best way. Nights like this don't arrive often, not with this quiet tone, not with this patient breath, and I suppose that's what makes them special. The room felt held. I felt held. Maybe by memory, maybe by the night, maybe just by the act of letting myself be still. Whatever it was enough. Lily released another one of those tiny huffs, the kind dogs make when they're adjusting their dreams. I smiled softly. If peace had a sound, it might be that. The lamp dimmed ever so slightly, as if it too was preparing for rest. I brushed my hand across the blanket on my lap, feeling its familiar weave beneath my palm, the quiet weight of things that stay. And tonight, that staying matters, more than I can say out loud, more than the night needs to hear. I think I'm ready to let the evening close itself gently. You've been here with me, in that quiet, unspoken way that doesn't require presence to feel like companionship. And it means something. It truly does. Even if I only whisper that truth into the quiet. Before I rise, I want the room to remember this stillness, the cup cooling, the rain finished, the lamp steady, Lily breathing, and this quiet part of me that only appears when the night grows soft enough. All right, sweetheart, let's bring the evening to a close. Rest well tonight, sweetheart. Good night from me.